Careful, Granny Gearhead, don't strain your back unscrewing that panel. The burst of laughter echoed through Hangar 12, at Falcon Ridge Air Base, Nevada. The words came from Airman First Class Riley Turner, 21 years old, broad-shouldered, and smug with the kind of confidence only youth could afford. He leaned against the wing of an F-35 like he owned it, arms crossed, grinning at his own joke. His buddy, Airman Novak, joined in, louder than he needed to be. Seriously, this is comedy gold. Retired old-timers fixing retired old planes. Next thing you know, she's gonna ask us to bring her knitting kit for after work. More laughter. Even the junior techs chuckled nervously, not out of cruelty, but because mocking Margaret, Maggie, Hale was practically tradition around here. She didn't answer. She rarely did. With silver-streaked hair pulled neatly into a bun under a grease-stained cap, Maggie's focus stayed on the A-10 Thunderbolt II sitting in the corner of the hangar. Its olive drab paint was faded, scarred with years of service. Like her. Don't bother, Novak continued, smirking as he lit a stick of gum like it was a cigar. They're hauling that relic to the boneyard next week. Finally putting it out of its misery. Guess it's only fair Granny Hale here does the honors. Old bird for an old bird. Another wave of laughter rippled across the hangar. But Hale didn't look up. Her hands, calloused steady, slid across the cold fuselage as if she were reading Braille on steel. She whispered something under her breath. None of them caught it, but if they had, they would have heard her call the jet by name. Iron Hawk. This wasn't just any A-10. This was her bird. And though she hadn't flown combat in nearly 2 decades, Maggie Hale had once been the terror of armored columns in 2 different wars. A pilot whose call sign, Valkyrie, still carried weight among those who remembered. But these kids didn't remember. They only saw age, coveralls, and grease under her nails. Hale tightened the last bolt on the engine cowling, then set her wrench down quietly. She didn't rise to their bait. She never did. Respect wasn't begged for. It was earned in silence, or taken in fire. What they didn't know was that their laughter would echo differently soon. Because within hours, the desert sky would burn, and Valkyrie would rise again. Turner stretched and cracked his knuckles like he'd just finished a championship round of verbal sparring. Come on, Novak. Let's grab chow. Granny's got this bird. Maybe she'll take it out for a spin if she remembers how the throttle works. The pair left with a swagger, boots clattering on the polished hangar floor. Their laughter faded into the buzz of fluorescent lights and the distant hum of generators. Silence settled again, leaving only the low creak of metal as Maggie leaned against the A-10's landing strut. She wiped sweat from her brow with a rag older than most of the airmen on base. Don't mind them, ma'am, said Sergeant Elena Ruiz, the only one who ever bothered to speak up. A sharp-eyed mechanic in her late 20s, Ruiz had a reputation for competence and quiet defiance. She was younger than Maggie by 3 decades but carried herself with a seriousness that often made her peers uncomfortable. They're just kids. They don't know what you've seen. Maggie gave her a small smile. It's not their fault. History books don't cover everything worth remembering. She glanced at the A-10's battered paint job, the sun-bleached lightning bolt stenciled on the nose. To them, this jet's just a relic. To me, it's the reason a lot of good men and women came home. Ruiz studied her. This one, you flew it, didn't you? Hale hesitated. Her thumb brushed a dent under the cockpit rail, a scar that only she knew the story of. Iron Hawk and I, we've been through hell together. Balkans, Mesopotamia, Kunar Province. She let out a dry laugh. You name it, we've probably left smoke and craters there. Ruiz's eyes widened. You mean, you were Valkyrie? Maggie looked at her sharply, a trace of surprise breaking through her practiced calm. Where'd you hear that? My uncle served in Afghanistan. Army Ranger. He used to talk about a pilot named Valkyrie. Said she came screaming out of the sky when they were pinned by armor near Jalalabad. Called it the voice of salvation with wings of iron. He said you didn't just save lives, you scared the hell out of the enemy. For a moment, Maggie said nothing. Memories pressed at the edges of her mind, tracers ripping the night sky, radio calls screaming for support, the thunder of the Gu-8 cannon drowning out her own heartbeat. That was a long time ago, she said finally. Now I just keep the old birds clean. Ruiz tilted her head. Doesn't seem like the kind of thing that ever really leaves you. Maggie didn't answer. Instead, she climbed up the ladder into the cockpit and lowered herself into the seat like it was still hers. Her fingers hovered over the instruments, muscle memory twitching in her joints. She closed her eyes and let the past whisper to her, the stench of cordite, the desperate voices on the radio, the rumble of explosions below. In the reflection of the canopy glass, she almost didn't recognize the woman staring back, gray hair, lined face, tired eyes. But beneath that was someone else. Someone who'd once flown into the teeth of war and laughed back. Someone who hadn't quite died yet. And somewhere beyond the Nevada horizon, war was brewing again. The quiet of the hangar shattered in an instant. The klaxon alarm wailed, loud enough to rattle every pane of glass. A red strobe lit the rafters like a heartbeat, painting the steel beams in violent flashes. A voice boomed through the intercom. All personnel, code Crimson. Forward operating base Sentinel under sustained attack. Heavy casualties reported. All available assets scramble immediately. Within seconds, Hangar 12 was chaos. Flight crews bolted for their birds. Mechanics scrambled to clear equipment from the taxi lanes. The sleek F-35s roared to life one by one, their engines screaming as they powered up. Apache gunships from the Rotary Wing Division thundered out of their shelters, blades chopping the air like war drums. Sergeant Rees grabbed her headset, shouting orders to the maintenance crew. Move! Move! Clear the runway access! Turner and Novak ran back in, helmets half-fastened, suddenly all business. Their cockiness vanished in the strobe-lit rush. We're wheels up in 2, Turner barked. Get those tow lines off the bird! For a moment, Maggie just stood at the base of the A-10, rag still in her hand, watching the storm unfurl. She had seen this before. The split-second switch from peacetime swagger to the frantic rhythm of war. Some men lived for it. Others broke. At the command post across the hangar, Major Davis slammed a fist on the desk. I need close air support for Sentinel's East Valley approach. They're rolling armor up the slope. A younger officer scrolled frantically through a tablet. Sir, all CAS assets are committed to the Northern Theater. Every Hawk and Strike Eagle in the region is already tasked. Then find me one. Davis growled. Negative, sir. The officer's face paled. The last active A-10 detachment shipped out to Europe 2 weeks ago. We've got nothing left in theater. What about this bird? Davis jabbed a finger toward the Iron Hawk, sitting quiet in the shadows of the hangar. Technical Sergeant O'Leary, the crew chief, shook his head. She's decommissioned, sir. Paperwork's already filed. Besides, nobody here's qualified to fly her. Last Hawk pilot rotated stateside months ago. The major cursed under his breath, pulling off his headset for a second. Then Sentinel is on their own. Those words cut through the hangar noise sharper than the alarm. Everyone heard them. Ruiz froze mid-step. Turner looked at Novak, wide-eyed. Even the ground crews paused for a fraction of a heartbeat. And Maggie Hale, standing 15 feet from the Iron Hawk's nose, lowered her rag slowly into her tool pouch. Her face didn't change. Not visibly. But inside, something long buried uncoiled, stretching like an old predator remembering how to hunt. Turner noticed her glance toward the cockpit ladder and scoffed nervously. Don't even think about it, Granny. That's not a tractor you can just joyride. She said nothing. Just turned and walked, not fast but deliberate, toward the pilot gear room at the far side of the hangar. Novak frowned. Where's she going? They didn't get an answer. Because 5 minutes later, the hangar was about to erupt in a very different kind of chaos. The gear room was nearly empty, save for a rack of helmets, flight suits, and survival vests that hadn't been touched in years. Most of the gear was too new for her, streamlined composites, lighter fabrics. But the essentials hadn't changed. Oxygen mask, harness straps, boots. The smell of sweat and nylon hit her like a memory grenade. Maggie's hands didn't hesitate. They moved the way they had for 2 decades of combat missions, checking each buckle, each seam, with quiet precision. The Velcro rasp of her gloves, the click of her harness, the weight of the helmet settling on her head, every sound was a ritual she thought she'd left behind. As she pulled the helmet strap tight under her chin, her reflection caught in a scratched mirror on the wall. For just a moment, she didn't see the silver-haired mechanic everyone mocked. She saw Valkyrie, the pilot who had once carved steel through the sky. Her lips moved, whispering the call sign she hadn't spoken aloud in 20 years. Valkyrie, one more flight. Back in the hangar, technicians shouted over the noise of F-35s taxiing. Nobody noticed the Iron Hawk at first. Nobody except Reese, who froze when she heard it, the low, guttural cough of twin turbofan engines spooling up. Her head whipped around. The A-10's intake fans spun faster and faster, the beast shaking off dust like a sleeping giant disturbed from slumber. Warning klaxons blared as the system recognized a maintenance lock bypass. Red lights flashed across the cockpit canopy. Turner dropped the toolkit in his hands. No way. No freaking way. Novak's jaw went slack. Who the hell? Killed the startup! O'Leary barked, sprinting for the external control cart. But before he reached it, the canopy lowered with a hiss, sealing the cockpit shut. Through the glass, a helmeted figure sat upright, hands flying across the switches with surgical precision. The APU whined, generators kicked, and the instrument panel came alive. Green lights blinked in perfect sequence. This wasn't some amateur fumbling at controls. This was someone who knew the Hog's heart better than their own pulse. The tower came alive over the hangar speakers. Unidentified pilot in aircraft tail number 82 to 1472, shut down immediately. You are not authorized for taxi. Identify yourself. The engines roared into full military power. The ground beneath their boots trembled. Dust whipped across the hangar like a miniature sandstorm. Major Davis stormed out onto the flight line, headset cord trailing. Who the hell authorized this? He screamed, but his words were drowned by the thunder of the Hog waking up. Then a voice crackled over the tower frequency. Calm. Steady. Familiar to those who had studied the legends. Tower, this is Valkyrie. Request immediate clearance for combat air patrol. American soldiers are dying. Clear my runway. The tower went silent for a beat, the operators frozen in disbelief. Then someone whispered what everyone else was thinking. Valkyrie? She's been retired 20 years. Negative, negative. Major Davis barked into the radio, shoving the tower operator aside. His voice cracked with anger and desperation. Unidentified pilot, you will shut down your engines immediately or face court-martial charges under federal law. This is an illegal act. The A-10's canopy reflected the crimson of the hangar strobes, hiding her face. But her voice was sharp, clear, and steady. Nellis Actual, this is Colonel Margaret Hale, United States Air Force, retired. Call sign Valkyrie. Authorization is soldiers under fire and no one else in position to help. Now clear the airspace. The tower fell silent. The name rippled through the control room like a shockwave. Operators exchanged stunned looks. Someone muttered, Valkyrie? From the Kuner runs? Another shook his head. She was a myth. She's not supposed to be. Ruiz, standing on the hangar floor, whispered it aloud, more to herself than anyone else. She's real. Major Davis clenched the headset, glaring at the Hog's engine spitting fire across the taxi lane. He glanced at his watch. FOB Sentinel had been under attack for nearly half an hour. His F-35s were still 15 minutes out. The Rangers at Sentinel didn't have 15 minutes. He swallowed hard. Valkyrie, confirm you can actually operate that aircraft. You've been retired for 2 decades. The response came without hesitation. Sir, this bird and I have more combat hours together than every pilot on this base combined. If I can't fly her, nobody can. For a moment, Davis saw something in her words he couldn't ignore. The raw confidence of someone who had bled for it. The headset weighed heavy in his hand. Finally, he exhaled. Valkyrie, you are cleared hot. Go give those bastards hell. Copy, actual. Valkyrie is rolling. The A-10 lurched forward, tires squealing against concrete. Ground crew dove clear as the beast taxied with a stubborn authority, like a warhorse that had remembered the taste of battle. Turner stood frozen, watching the old woman he'd mocked just hours earlier. His lips moved, barely audible. Holy shit. She wasn't kidding. The hog lined up on the runway. Throttles pushed forward. Engines roared to maximum thrust. The entire hangar shook. Then the Iron Hawk surged down runway 31R, nose lifting, wings catching the desert wind. She climbed into the Nevada sky with the grace of a beast reborn. Inside the tower, one of the younger controllers whispered, "What do we even log this as?" The older operator, a Vietnam-era vet turned civilian contractor, didn't hesitate. "You log it as what it is. A legend taking flight." The desert blurred beneath her at 400 knots. The Iron Hawk's engines howled, and the old airframe shuddered as though remembering every combat sortie it had ever flown. But Maggie Hale's hands were steady. Muscle memory carried her fingers across the controls, each switch thrown with instinctual precision. She hadn't flown in 20 years, and it felt like yesterday. "FOB Sentinel, this is Valkyrie. I'm 10 minutes out. Give me a situation report." Static crackled, then a young, ragged voice came back. "Valkyrie? Jesus Christ, I thought you were a ghost. We've been under sustained fire 40 minutes. Multiple Kia. They've got armor pushing up the southern draw and MG nests pinning us from the ridgeline. We're down to our last belt of ammo." Maggie's voice didn't waver. "Copy that, Sentinel. Sit tight. I'm bringing steel rain." Behind her, Falcon Ridge Air Base reeled. Inside the hangar, Sergeant Rees ripped off her headset and pointed at Turner, who still stood dumbstruck. "You two think you're hot stuff? That woman just taxied an A-10 under your noses like you weren't even here. And you called her Granny." Turner stammered. I didn't know." His usual smirk was gone, replaced by something raw. Regret. Novak pulled out his phone, scrolling furiously. "Holy crap. Colonel Margaret Hale. 2 Silver Stars, 3 Distinguished Flying Crosses. 39 confirmed armor kills. They called her the Valkyrie of Cunner. She's a legend." Major Davis rubbed his temples, muttering. "She's also technically committing about 14 violations of Air Force regulations. But right now," he looked toward the horizon, where the A-10 had vanished into the blue. "Right now, she might be the only chance Sentinel has." Back in the cockpit, Maggie's eyes scanned the horizon. Black smoke rose in distant columns. Her jaw tightened. Memories whispered, tracer rounds streaking past her canopy, radio calls screaming her name, the smell of burning diesel and cordite. Her thumb brushed the weapons panel. The Gu-8 cannon armed with a familiar growl. Missiles primed. The beast was awake. "Sentinel, Valkyrie. Pop orange smoke on your position. Everything else is hostile." On the other end, the Ranger platoon leader's voice cracked with relief. "Roger, Valkyrie. God bless you." Maggie smiled faintly, eyes narrowing as the battlefield came into view. "No need to thank me yet. Let's dance." The Iron Hawk dropped altitude, skimming the desert floor, lining up her first run. The war wasn't ready for her return. But it was about to remember her name. The desert ridges rose ahead like jagged teeth. Smoke curled from FOB Sentinel, drifting across the valley in oily plumes. From her altitude, Maggie could see muzzle flashes strobing along the high ground, machine gun nests cut into the rocks, spitting death at the men hunkered below. She dropped lower, hugging the terrain. Every vibration, every shudder of the airframe spoke to her like an old language. At 300 knots, Just 60 feet above the sand, the hog felt alive again. Sentinel, Valkyrie. Visual on your position. Confirm friendlies marked orange? A flare arced skyward, bursting into bright orange smoke. Below it, tiny figures in mottled camos scrambled between ruined Hesco barriers. Around them, tracer fire snapped and ricocheted. Affirmative, Valkyrie. Orange is us. Everything else is bad guys. Copy that. Keep your heads down. She throttled forward, pulling the hog into a hard bank. Her eyes scanned the ridge. The rhythm of muzzle flashes told her everything. Firing arcs, reload timing, even the number of men at each position. Years of combat made it as clear as print on paper. Her thumb slid onto the trigger. A low mechanical growl filled the cockpit as the Gu-8 Avenger spun up. 7 barrels. 30mm rounds. 65 slugs a second. The sound hit like thunder cracking the world open, BRRT. A stream of red-hot tungsten stitched across the ridge. Rock exploded. Gunfire died mid-burst. Where the machine gun nest had been, there was now only a crater coughing dust into the sky. On the ground, a ranger yelled into the comms, his voice half hysteria, half joy. Jesus Christ! Valkyrie, you just erased them! She was already banking again. Second pass. Another nest spotted, 3 figures scrambling to reposition. Another squeeze of the trigger. Another growl of God's fury. Dust, debris, silence. 2 down, she muttered. 1 more to go. But the enemy wasn't idle. A streak of smoke tore upward from the valley. A surface-to-air missile, burning toward her canopy. Missile, missile, missile! Her hands moved before the warning even finished. Flares burst behind her, glowing decoys spinning out like fiery stars. She pulled hard into a turn, the hog groaning under the strain. The missile veered, confused, before detonating harmlessly in the air. Still got teeth, she growled under her breath, rolling level again. The Rangers' voices came back over the comms, steadier now, braver. Valkyrie, we've got tanks on the south approach. 3 of them. We're not equipped to hold armor. Maggie's eyes narrowed. Tanks. The very reason this beast had been built. Her hand slid from the cannon switch to the missile controls. The AGM-65 Mavericks hummed as they armed, ready to hunt. She smiled grimly. Sentinel, Valkyrie. Sit tight. The Iron Hawk's still hungry. The Mavericks locked tone with a sharp, insistent beep. Maggie lined the first tank up in her HUD, a lumbering beast crawling out of the southern draw. She squeezed the trigger. The missile streaked off the rail, smoke spiraling in its wake. Seconds later, it slammed into the tank's turret with a bloom of fire that rattled windows half a mile away. Splash 1, she said flatly, rolling into her next run. The second tank tried to maneuver, treads churning, but the hog swooped down low, almost skimming the sand. She switched back to the Gu-8. BRRT. 60 rounds punched through armor like paper. The vehicle erupted, flames belching skyward. The third tried to retreat. Maggie wasn't about to let it. Another Maverick shrieked free, chasing the steel hulk down the gully before ripping it apart in a blossom of orange fire. On the ground, the surviving enemy fighters broke. What had been a confident push turned into chaos. Silhouettes scattering, abandoning their positions as the ghost of a bygone war machine ripped them apart. Inside FOB Sentinel, Rangers rose from cover, some laughing, some shouting, all alive. One voice came over the comms, thick with disbelief. Valkyrie, you saved us. I don't even know what to say. Maggie's tone softened for the first time. Don't say anything, son. Just go home. That's what matters. She climbed out of her dive, the hog steady in the golden Nevada sky. Her fuel gauges warned she'd have to turn back soon. But for now, the battlefield was quiet. Back at Falcon Ridge, the control tower was silent. Every eye watched the radar return blinking across their scopes. A call sign had appeared, bold and simple, Valkyrie. Major Davis finally exhaled. Log it. Officially. The operator hesitated. Sir, under what status? Davis glanced out at the horizon where she flew, his voice low, almost reverent. Status? Call it what it is. The Iron Hawk flies again. The desert stretched endless below her as she turned for base, the sun catching the scar on her neck. For the first time in years, Maggie Hale felt whole. The world had tried to forget her. But tonight, the world would remember.